To say that Wuthering Waves patch 3.3 was amazing is putting it lightly. The story was nothing short of incredible. From the segue that brings up interesting questions about Hiyuki, to the main story that dives deep into the plan to wake the Exostrider, save Imeth, and forestall Aleph 1's descent. The story does an amazing job at setting the stakes, bringing the tension, and leaving enough questions to keep you wondering. That doesn't mean it's not without its flaws, but we'll get to those later. There was also a lot of misunderstandings and questionable takes from first reactions that I need to talk about too. But before we get any further, greetings, I'm Seraph Lord. If you're new here, welcome. I hope you'll consider subscribing. And if you're not new, welcome back. Let's talk about Wuthering Waves' patch 3.3 story. Surprisingly, we don't immediately pick up where we left off, but instead we start with a segue. This segue involves Hiyuki in Honami City, sending more of the Left Behind that didn't disappear after Rover and Chisa were there. We learn a lot about Hiyuki's personal regrets of being unable to save Honami, as even some of the Left Behind curse her name as she sends them to the hereafter. It's also here we get bits of Hiyuki's past, how she had an older sister that died from using the same powers as she. Hiyuki and Gyokuro were both Miko of Ashinohara, meaning they hold special powers within the Suzu, the bells they wear around their wrists. Their abilities allow them to use the power of their possible futures in order to enact miracles in the present. However, each future they burn away comes at a cost, and like the Grand Architect says, it costs Gyokuro her life. Speaking of the Grand Architect, they appear in Honami in order to recruit Hiyuki into the Fraidus. This seems to be a regular thing for her, as she's used to their attempts by now. We are then taken to a series of recollections of the rover's journey through the eyes of the Fraidus. We get more insights into Hiyuki's own thoughts and hang-ups. She views herself as a failure, a Miko that failed Ashinohara when it needed her the most. She couldn't stop the Threnodian from destroying Honami, and yet being shown Rover's triumphs, you start to notice a hint of jealousy and admiration in Hiyuki. The devs do a fantastic job of making an otherwise stoic individual showcase these emotions purely through her eyes, because while her face remained neutral, you could tell the Grand Architect and Rover were getting to her. The GA showed her Rover's journey for one purpose: to convince Hiyuki to become a Threnodian Resonator, and that she can't be a savior without it. The GA's dialogue has some interesting implications about Rover too. It seems like Rover is getting more power from Abby than previously thought, so we owe the glutton more than we think. However, Hiyuki rejects the Grand Architect's offer and chooses to find her own way in defeating the Threnodian. The segue was great, and it gets us up to speed on who Hiyuki is as a person. I want to continue talking about what I liked about the story. I like the section where Rover speaks with Shorekeeper and how the Black Shores arrive to offer support and evacuation plans for the people of Lahairoi. It once again reminds us that the Black Shores, even when they're not the focus of the story, they are doing things in the background. Also, it's nice seeing Shorekeeper interact with Rover again, no matter how rude. Chase is a standout character. He doesn't appear at all in 3.0 to 3.2, and somehow with his introduction in 3.3, it feels like he's always been here. I like how his introduction is him waiting in the shadows before stepping into the light. Coupled with that blind eye, it shows his past may be darker than we realize. He also has met past Rover before, so maybe Rover helped him in a way that changed his life for the better. He participates in the evacuation efforts via the Duskveil plan and gives Rover the go-ahead to retrieve the Exostrider. But outside of that, his role is small. Still, I hope this isn't the last we see of him. After our first foray into the dimmer planes and our failed attempt at rescuing Imeth and losing the Exostrider, Rover finds himself back at the academy, where some time has passed. I like the whole section with Imyth and the time displacement that happens afterward. We also see the Fraxidus interfere with us during our attempt, with Denia pulling Rover away from Imyth. It was such a frustrating scene in a good way, as we were right there, but still couldn't bring Imyth home. When we're in the Space Trek Collective and after we found the runes, I find it amusing that researchers like Mornier and even Chase couldn't decipher it, despite Sigrika being right there. Oh well. Thanks to Rover's encouragement, she pinpoints where Imyth and the Exostrider are located in voice space. Our second trip into the dimmer planes was crazy to say the least. We work with Hiyuki to reach a second seal where the rover can cross into void space, all while avoiding Denia's assault. We start to feel a bit bad for Denia, as it's clear her agency has been completely robbed thanks to the Fraxidus, and now she's merely Aleph 1's resonator and vessel for its power. We also get more characterization of both Rover and Hiyuki. Circling back to her segue, Hiyuki finally asks Rover if they take these risks because they're confident in them succeeding. I love Rover's answer here, as they state that if they were so confident in their abilities, they wouldn't have needed to wipe their memories in the first place. There are people who still believe Rover to be a perfect protagonist, the ideal savior, but Rover spells it out cleanly. If they were perfect, there'd be no lament anymore. It's funny, the Grand Architect went on and on about how perfect Rover is in the segue, only for Rover to deny their words. It's like the Grand Architect is a stand-in for Rover's detractors. Speaking of the Grand Architect, they try to trap Hiyuki and force the assimilation of her and Denia via Leviathan's power, the Dark Tide. However, Hiyuki successfully burns away the future that would have made her a Threnodian resonator, foiling the Grand Architect's plot. It is here that the GA tells us Denia's identity, that she's merely a creation of the Fraxidus. The details aren't totally clear, but I assume Denia is a homunculus of sorts, an artificial life form whose purpose is to resonate with the Threnodian. The GA states they have the ability to make even more Denias, and they can keep creating them until they have their true Threnodian resonator. Also, it's worth noting that the Grand Architect states they're trying to show Solaris another way. We'll get back to this line later. After the Grand Architect sets Denia on us and we defeat her, we get another cutscene with Rover and Hiyuki, which I like a lot. It is here where Hiyuki questions Rover's motivations for saving Imyth, and if they regret walking the path of a savior. Rover's answer is beautiful, and once again reiterates that they play a part in the success of Jinzhou and Renacita against the Threnodian, and that they weren't the sole savior who saved the day. Not only this, Rover also gives Hiyuki encouragement and a little bit of hope, that even though she failed to protect the Shinohara, she's not alone, and there are still people who look up to her and are proud of her. You can see that Rover's encouragement visibly shakes Hiyuki. This exchange does a lot for Hiyuki's character, and I feel like it puts her on her character journey of self-forgiveness and actualization. Hiyuki has been full of self-doubt and uncertainty as she's been haunted by her failures. This exchange could be the first push on her new journey. And the final scenes leading up to Aleph 1's boss fights are just incredible. Earlier in the story, we took Imyth's Exoswarm shell with us to void space when we piloted the Exostrider, and when we were attacked by Denia, the shell suddenly awoke as Imyth and returned the cassette back to us. We return it to the Space Trek Collective where we discovered the runes placed inside, and Sigrika deciphers them. We get to see Imyth's perspective of what happened here. The leftover frequencies of the explorers destroyed by void matter came to help wake the Exostrider and provide the coordinates for its location. It's here we get our first phase of the Aleph 1 fight, as we hold the line for Imeth to retrieve the drive replica built by the Space Trek Collective. We lose round 1, but Imeth makes it in time to help Rover and the Exostrider finish the fight. And afterward, the Exostrider, having gained a voice, tells us that it will stay behind to hold Aleph 1 back should it return to Solaris 3. It gives us a record of a probe sent from Solaris long ago, before Rover and Imeth return. The story ends with the Grand Architect communicating with Cristoforo about their experiments on Lahai Roy, and their plans for the future. It's a good scene that's easily misunderstood, which I will get into soon. But we also get another epilogue with Hiyuki confronting the shade of her sister, Gyokuro, and the Grand Architect contacts her where she learns that her hometown has vanished, and now her wish has finally come true. Like I mentioned earlier, there was something about the story I wasn't a fan of. I wouldn't say I full-on disliked it, but I have to say I wasn't a fan of the section where we go to the Space Trek Collective and go on the rune hunt. It just didn't feel necessary. It felt like padding. While it was nice to see past NPCs like the Shaper again, the entire section could have used a revision or two. But I don't know, that's just me. There's also something weird going on with Chisa. She didn't have any voice acting in the cutscenes despite being featured in them. Hell, it looked like she was planning to speak in a few of them, but just didn't. I wonder if there was some contract dispute between her Chinese voice actress and Kuro Games or something else. Oh well. I want to get into some of the misconceptions and just outright wrong interpretations I've seen of the story, because there were a bit upon initial reactions. First is that Aleph 1 wasn't destroyed and that the Exostrider sent it to the far reaches of the universe. I don't know where people got the misinfo, but Threnodians cannot be destroyed. Maybe they thought Leviathan was, but no, they were sealed away. And Overthrax isn't dead either. If Threnodians could be killed, then Rover wouldn't have needed to wipe their memories in the first place. Also, there's the Grand Architect and the Fraidus. Some people think that the Fraidus are some shonen level antagonists who exist to pick fights with the Rover and want to kill or defeat them. That also isn't true. They are at odds with Rover because of their methods. The Fraidus want to save Solaris too. Recall how the Grand Architect said that they were trying to show Solaris another way? Everything they do is in service of that, including finding a perfect Threnodian resonator by creating artificial humans. Hell, Scarlet spent most of 1.0 trying to convince Rover to join them, and even now, the Grand Architect calls Rover the perfect savior. The only reason why people think the Fraidus want to kill Rover is because of 2.5. I swear, that patch broke some people's brains. Just because Frolova has her personal hangups with Rover doesn't mean that's how the entire organization thinks or believes. You people need to let it go. Also, no, the Fraidus didn't fail in Lahai Roy. They did what they needed to do, which was to test Denia, their first successful creation. Now that she's in the hands of the Collective, she may still have some use to the Fraidus, but she's otherwise useless to them now. Finally, the theory crafters need to set their expectations. They did a lot of gassing up for Chisa, from her being Hiyuki's daughter, to her being the one to help Rover save Imeth and defeat Aleph 1. I'm saying this as a fan of Chisa myself, but you guys need to slow down and think logically here. There was nothing in the story that told us Chisa would have a larger role to play. There was no obvious hints anywhere, and the evidence was circumstantial at best. In order to make a proper theory, you need hard evidence as a foundation before moving into the circumstantial. And there was no hard evidence of Chisa being Hiyuki's daughter, nor were there any hard evidence that she was going to be the secret weapon in the war against Aleph 1. Anyway, I've talked a lot, so I'm going to wrap things up here. Patch 3.3 story was excellent, and we still have Denny's chapter and whatever lies in 3.4. It seems like the Lahai Roy story arc is nearing its end. Let's hope it ends with a bang and not a whimper. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Later.